From my perspective, the way I usually think about load carriage is going to be a combination or individually, you're going to pick some kind of belt. You're going to have some kind of thing on your chest. You can do the load bearing harness, which I think is kind of in between. And then there's a pack of some sort. And how you would go about setting yourself up would be one of those or some combination of those. Some of them don't work well together. Some of them do. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah. I mean, and this may sound cliche, guys, but it's absolutely true. Everything is mission specific, and environment specific. Obviously a guy that lives out in an urban setting and is going to be operating in an urban setting isn't going to be wearing the same stuff that you would wear, in deep woods and South Florida jungles and stuff. The amount of stuff that you're carrying or the type of gear and equipment that you're carrying into, let's say, a mount or urban setting isn't going to mirror what's going to be carried and used in a woodland intensive environment like that. So yeah, it's all mission specific. Everybody likes to think that there's this cookie cutter approach to things, but the reality is that's just not going to work. And you'll find that out very quick when you get boots on the ground and you start moving around.
So what's one of the big trade-offs you run into? Like the one that comes to mind, especially for someone wearing plates, would be like heat. Like if you're producing a lot of heat, that's going to be a problem. But then we wore plate carriers in the desert.
The body armor in particular is very mission specific in my opinion. Now, if you look at the U.S. military, it's easy to see that they're going to say, no, you're going to wear body armor 24/7. Well, if you backtrack, even as recently as my first deployment in 2003, we did missions where we were just deuce gear and boonies. And a lot of people might not believe that, but I'm telling you 100% it's accurate. When I say like deuce gear or LBE or anything like that, that's referring to load bearing equipment, slick, no body armor, just, like a vest, or picture Alice equipment with suspenders and a web belt, battle belt, that type of stuff. Here, we used to wear LBEs that would go over your flak jacket. And as the years progressed and, Molly came more and more prolific and whatnot, a lot of guys attached stuff directly to the flaks. But what we're seeing is kind of a circling back per se, is, because it kind of sucks to have everything attached to your flak when, you need to go dig a fighting position or go on a working party where you got to dig, a bunch of shitters or something. You know what I mean? You need to have your weapon and ammunition source on you. Well, now you got to have your whole flak with you, as opposed to just having your deuce gear. But, it used to be back in the day, especially like in the Army's doctrine, it's like, hey, you had a Kevlar helmet, your deuce gear, and these guys, and you pretty much what your fighting load, what you had to go into the fight to sustain you for, 24 to 72 hours, and you were light, and you could operate in that small time frame and get there fast and quick. But now everybody's weighed down. You got 4 sappy plates, one on the front, one on the back, and 2 smaller ones on the side, your side sappies, and then that's in addition to your actual body armor with your ammunition, frags, smokes, pyro, radios, chow. I don't think there's anything light about infantry anymore. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, that's a shame, and that needs to change. And I mean, we can pick any number of categories involving like infantrymen's gear and weapon systems. You can just see this big circle, right? This big circle about like things progressing, and then they circle back, and then it looks like something, or it's back to a concept that we were doing, a couple decades ago. And just an example I'll use is, when I went into Iraq in 2003, my primary service rifle was an M16A2. When I went back in 2004, my primary service rifle was an M16A4. Now we have quad rails. Now we have, everybody's got MBGs this time, as opposed to 2003 where, my machine gun team, only one guy had a pair of 7 Bravos between the 3 of us. Now we were a machine gun team, and we had, a night vision optic for our M240 Golf, and we had a PAS 13. But as far as individual goggles, there was only one per the team. But back to the rifle itself. So now we got quad rails. You got a nice, cool PEC system, to mount on there. But we were still iron sights. And then as the years kind of went on, now everybody's got ACOGs, everybody's got PECs, lights, everything else. Well, now we go to M4s because they're lighter and more convenient, telescoping stocks and whatnot, and we've got so much shit mounted on it. It actually is heavier than the original, M16A4 or M16A2 I carried in 2003, even though it's a smaller rifle. Now we have the M27 IAR, which is even heavier than all of that stuff. So now, and what are we seeing in the civilian world? Well, we got guys, not using quad rails anymore. They're trying to lighten up these rifles. They're going back to like pencil profile barrels to lighten their weapons as opposed to heavy barrels. So it's like pencil barrels, the stuff that was on A1s, M16A1 service rifles. So you can see this in our weapons, how it's like, we're going down this rabbit hole, which we think is modernizing everything. And now we've made our weapons so heavy, it's like comparable to an M14 or heavier, then it got replaced by an M16 to make it lighter and go to a different direction. And now we're back at a super heavy rifle. And now we got to go back to the drawing board to think how we're going to make this thing lighter with all this new crap that we have to mount on these weapons.
It's like what's the joke about? Like, oh yeah, I'm still, like they gave me 80 pounds of the lightest weight stuff science could come up with. It's still 80 pounds of it.
Yeah.
When you're talking about mission dictates, like where is something like a belt, like a battle belt, or even just like, I call it battle belt. It's where it's like the whole like Molly belt. No suspenders on it though. Where is that most appropriate? Like for me, that's like the two mags pistol, 2 pistol mags, first aid kit, water. I'm a weirdo. I carry a canteen on it anyway. Not much else. Like it's just kind of I'm doing like work duty or just kind of milling around, and I'm not expecting anything, but I've got 3 mags if I need it.
I really like, war belts, pistol belts. What were you calling it? Battle belt.
Yeah. This thing hanging over here behind me.
Yes, I do like those. Now you're going to look at mine, you're going to be like, that thing looks like it's from freaking Vietnam. I mean, I literally wear an Alice belt with, the old cushion thing. I mean, it works, guys. It's got the big Fastex buckle. But I have like a modern day Marine Corps dump pouch. And this is, my pistol's attached to that. And, I have IFAK and stuff like that attached to it as well. But I like them because it takes a lot of the weight and it puts it on your hips, and then it frees up my flak, right? Or my plate carrier, whatever I'm wearing up top. And it enables me to cut down the profile on the front. Again, going back to like being able to go prone and being as flat as possible. Because I'm telling you guys, when the rounds start flying, like you go prone or you find cover. And when you got to go prone, like you're trying to get as flat as freaking possible. Because that butthole pack factor is pretty high in combat.
Mm. What I like is a layering idea where you hit the battle belt, and that'll give you pistol, two pistol mags, 2 rifle mags, first aid kit. I carry water and a fixed blade.
Yeah.
But then if you need more, throw on the chest rig, 4 more mags plus any other stuff, and now you've like got a pretty lightweight loadout. Throw a pack on top of that, and now you're pretty well set for most things. And it's pretty minimal. Like that's like his concept, which I like. He calls it the fight light.
Yeah, a lot of units have those SOPs where it's like, hey, this is your first line gear, this is your second line gear, so on and so forth. For that very purpose.
Yeah, this kind of layering. So let's go into the chest rig then. So I know you have your experience, but I know you've also played with like going back to like the Chinese style and the Russian style with the AK mags and stuff. So where does chest rig fit in this for you?
I really like chest rigs. However, I don't feel like I want to wear them all the time. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say. I'll give an example. So like going up to One Shepherd, it's all infantry patrolling out there. You got to wear a load bearing vest or, load bearing equipment. So when I go up there, I'm wearing an old school like LBV 88, but I mean, the magazines are right here on my chest. I got 6 magazines right here on my chest, and then that's it. Okay. The rest of that stuff is distributed on that particular web gear via a battle belt that the LBV attaches to. But I've got other stuff like UW gear chest rigs that I like to wear when I go and shoot, go to the range or whatever. If I'm doing just, square range stuff, Absolutely like to just wear those, chest rigs right there because I don't need an LBV 88 to go, shoot and screw around. But I would think that uh, a chest rig is a good thing if, like, let's say you're doing that battle belt concept, you're wearing that battle belt, you throw on that chest, that plate carrier. You throw on the plate carrier, and you need to plus up, with extra magazines for whatever. Something like the Minuteman series that John has with UW gear. That chest rig is really small. It's really slim profile. You just throw that on top of it. It weighs practically nothing. I go back and forth with chest rigs. I use them all the time when I'm just going to like square range and stuff. But I can really see that those coming into play when you're doing that battle belt, plate carrier, and then if you need the extra mags, hey, a slim profile chest rig to throw on top of that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to come back to now the LBE topic, because I think that's the nostalgia in me is like, that's the way to do it. That's how like the military throughout history has carried stuff on their waist with some kind of suspension system. And then we got away from that. And I think a lot of that has to do with, and you can tell me if I'm wrong and I'm way off here, but I think a lot of it has to do with vehicles. Is that it just, the more you're riding around in a vehicle, the less comfortable it is to have stuff all the way around your back. But I think it doesn't mean it wasn't useful.
Oh, 100%. 100%. In Iraq, we got used to being sheltered in, because we're going in these up armored Humvees and stuff, and MRAPs and everything else. And yeah, having two canteens and a butt pack on your back was not comfortable sitting in those little tiny ass seats in those tactical vehicles. So yeah, absolutely. Plus guys got conditioned to, with the molly attaching everything to their vests. So that's kind of how we saw the death of LBEs, or LBVs, LBEs, whatever you're using. But here's the reality, guys. We have the tendency of always fighting the last war, right? Well, in Iraq, we got conditioned to fighting Iraq. Well, if you guys remember Afghanistan, we went in hard, right? We kind of attained all our objectives, and then Afghanistan died down significantly, and then Iraq flared up big time, and everybody forgot about Afghanistan. Well, once Iraq started to come back down, all of a sudden Afghanistan picked back up, and we started going back into Afghanistan. And what do we got there? Oh my God, we got guys patrolling down wadis and canals and stuff like that, going back to light fighter tactics and patrolling and stuff. And it's not what we were generally doing in Iraq. A lot of the stuff that was going on in Iraq was vehicle mounted and just heavy armor. So it's like all this armor came out that. Well, sorry, I was checking to see if I still had that piece of shit near me. I have this old Marine flak. I forget what the name of it was called. It was the worst flak I've ever had in my Marine Corps career. But this thing made you like a Kevlar turtle, and the mobility was terrible. I think it was called the MTV or something like that. And that was designed because of Iraq, because they were coming out like, why are all these guys getting killed because of IEDs and stuff? Well, they tried to use that same flak system in Afghanistan, and it was terrible. Guys going down these heat casualties, they have no mobility, and that's essentially how we got the plate carriers. When I went to Afghanistan in 2010, they gave us that MTV, and then they also gave us this plate carrier, and they said, here are these two vests. You can wear whichever one you like. It's your choice. Because they wanted to say, hey, we're giving you the option to wear all this body armor. Nobody wore that. Everybody took the plate carrier, the slim down. Everybody sacrificed protection for lightweight mobility.
Now, something you mentioned earlier, and also before we started that Pew Pew Archives just brought up in here, is that going back to jungle fighting. So years ago, I started looking at what was going on in the world and figured out that we were probably going to wind down Afghanistan and Iraq and then look at the bigger threats. And I was on your channel the other night, and we were talking about this, and China was a big topic. And Pacific Theater, and here we are. So we started seeing this, I remember several years ago, we started seeing this uptick in this return back to LBE styles of like renewed Alice. My favorite being like the Velocity Systems jungle stuff. I've got a bunch of those pouches with some Blue Forest gear, but that doesn't matter. It's just gear. But just back to this idea of like a harness with your pouches around your belt. Mm-hmm. The Brits never really got away from it, and it works well for them in jungle schools. But it seems like there's this trend that people reading the tea leaves that we're kind of going back to this.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And go on YouTube and watch videos of Marines going through the Jungle Warfare Training Center in Okinawa, and look at their gear. Look what they're wearing. They're slick. They're wearing nothing but load-bearing vests and equipment. Or if they are looking at their plate carriers, look at it and see if you can tell if it's got sappies in it or not. I bet you they took them out if they have it on. And it's 100%. You can't, if we ever go back into a jungle environment and we try to wear all that stuff, all that body armor, front, back, side sappies, guys are going to go down at such a high rate from heat casualties. We're never even going to get to the fight. I mean, you look at Vietnam. In Vietnam, look at videos and you will see that Marines, for the most part, wore their flaks, right? The Army, on the other hand, didn't. At least when they left the wire. You look at them back in the rear when they're like on guard duty or they're in convoys and stuff. They have their flak and helmets on. But Marines seem to. It might have been corps wide. It might have been like SOP per unit or whatever. But for the most part, you see Marines wear their flaks. And all those Vietnam era guys always complain like, we didn't want to wear that shit. It's too heavy. It's cumbersome. I've got like 6 M1955 Vietnam era flaks over here. If I pick those up, those weigh practically nothing compared to what we wear today. I mean, and they were fighting in a jungle environment in Vietnam, and they were saying like, this shit is too big, it's too cumbersome, it's not worth it. And now I'm holding what we wear today, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. Seriously. So if we go back in the Pacific and have to fight the Chinese, God forbid, and I'm a believer that that's going to happen eventually. The whole Marine Corps believes that because we're revamping the whole Marine Corps to address that threat. You're going to see a drastic change in how we operate and what kind of gear Marines are wearing. There's no question in my mind about that whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with you. Granted, not my career field, but yeah, just that the way the tea leaves is running, it just seems like there's so many things playing out from history that are just rhyming that it's just kind of setting itself up. Granted, mission dictates means that, you know, especially in like your situation or someone who's active duty is going to be issued a lot of this stuff. And it's kind of like, all right, use the most appropriate. But for people who are like the everyday person who is just like, all right, well, I'm coming with what I've got. I don't have limited budget. So if you could pick one combination of gear that you would say like, look, this is probably the 80% solution for most people, what do you think that would be?
I would probably go the route of a battle belt, like you were talking. A battle belt with your essentials on it. Have the capability of putting, canteens or Nalgene bottles in that. Now I'm saying ability, so like a pouch that can hold these things. But if you don't need that stuff for whatever reason, being able to fit inside a car, for instance, you can take that out. But the pouch, just collapses. It doesn't have, the mass behind it. Being able to have your secondary pistol on there, your first aid, your IFAC on there, maybe a magazine or two on that battle belt, having that. I would say have that plate carrier to be able to put that extra body armor on. And then you can always pull those plates out if you're using that plate carrier as your LB. Like if you mounted that additional equipment, like your extra magazines to your plate carrier, and mission dictates that you don't need a plate carrier, but that's where your stuff is mounted to. We can always pull those plates out, right? And you still have that load-bearing vest essentially to work off of. Or if you don't want to go that route, have a chest rig, right? If you don't want to take your plates out, you have to set that plate carrier aside, throw that chest rig on, and then there you go. But I would say lean towards that for kind of like an average setup, right? Like a battle belt setup, a plate carrier setup, and then maybe a chest rig. And then between those three things, I think that gives you a lot of latitude on what you can do with it to